Hello, photographers, and welcome to this week's Creative in Camera project. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to create two illusions using a simple egg. You'll need a small table, two pieces of A4 coloured paper in colours that look good together, a larger piece of black card about A3, an egg, and something small and round to place your egg on. I used this thing which I found in my father's toolbox, but blue tack could also work. To avoid messy accidents, you may wish to hard-boil your egg first, so be sure to choose the most attractive one in your carton. If they have numbers printed on the side, these will wash away during the boiling process, which is another reason it's a good idea to boil your egg. Carefully lower your egg into boiling water so it doesn't break, and then let it cool to room temperature so you don't get condensation that will wet your card, which I learned the hard way. Next, set up your table with the black card on top. Position this in a portrait orientation to allow more space at the top. Then place your first sheet of coloured paper so one side is exactly straight up and down. The second piece should be positioned so that the long edge is off to the side, which gives you a bit more surface to work with. And then line up the corners so they meet precisely. Now, paper works better than card because the thicker edge of card can mess with the illusion and mean more tidying in post. Pop the egg right at this corner. I tried to get clever and angled my egg so it looked like it was about to topple off. But this actually ruined the illusion a little, so try and keep it straight. But always worth experimenting. Now to lighting. To sell the effect, your egg needs to cast a shadow, so some directional light is required. I've created two versions for you so you can compare the difference. The first was in my dark garage, using a flash in a softbox positioned as low and as close as possible, and pointing towards the egg so that the shadow falls off to the side on the coloured paper. The power was at about 1/16. You may also wish to bounce some light back from the other side, but I didn't really feel the need. For comparison, I also tried an undiffused light so you could see the difference. But it was too harsh, which is why a softbox is ideal. This makes lighting a little bit tricky because you really want it directed at the egg without it lighting up the black card to create the illusion. But you also want it big and soft to wrap around the egg, which means a little extra editing may be required. And I'll show you that later on. The second is a natural light version, which I shot by a large window with curtains that allowed me to control the light. As you can see, it doesn't really work as well because without the flash, the colours are washed out and the wider aperture created less convincing blurry edges. For this reason, a telephoto or macro lens likely won't work as well because they introduce too much depth, which destroys the illusion. That's why it's best to use a lens on the wider side, such as a 24-70, to compress the scene. Though I found that zooming my lens into 70mm worked best. Because an egg is round, your lens will struggle to find focus, so back button or manual focus is pretty much essential. And I found that by turning on an overhead light, it created a spot of light on the egg, which I then used to get focus. Having the wrong point of focus will easily ruin your shots, so take some time to get this right. It's best to move your focal point right over the egg, because I found that using focus and recompose meant the focus was slightly off. The camera settings I used were 1/200th of a second to sync with my flash, an aperture of f8 for a bit more in focus, and ISO 100. The most important thing to get this illusion right is to always position the up and down card in shot so that it's directly straight. You should have some guidelines in your viewfinder, so make sure to use these to get this line straight before taking each shot. Then frame your shots so that you don't see the background or any of the paper edges. Now to the hardest part, how to create the most convincing illusion. I wish I could give you a magic formula to get this right, but my brain is not good with angles and maths. So I had to do a lot of experimenting with this, and I suggest you do too. In this video, I varied my camera height so you can see what angle looks most convincing. I prefer it more on the lower side. In this video, I varied the position of the paper so you can see what angle looks best. I prefer it positioned further out. But this will all be dependent on the lens you use, the distance you shoot from, and the angle of the egg. So experiment a lot to be sure to get some winners in the mix. I have suspicions that cutting down the paper so it's more a triangle than a rectangle might work better. Next, I tried some different items. The reason an egg is perfect for this illusion is because its round shape is more forgiving. And it's also fragile, which creates an interesting tension. So if you want to try other items, choose ones that are similarly rounded or fragile. I tried a tomato, a light bulb, which I really like, a lemon, and Totoro. This technique is a bit of a one-trick pony, so once you're done with this setup, I recommend trying a second egg illusion. For this, I used the same background and lighting, but instead I grabbed a few more eggs and positioned them on milk bottle lids to raise them up from the background and distance them from their shadow so they look like they're floating. You can position these however you like, and then further sell the illusion by including your hands or other storytelling items. Then simply shoot from directly overhead. I used a tripod and a remote so I could include my hands in shot. Now, let's quickly jump into editing and I'll show you how to deepen the blacks and remove the stand if you can see it. Now we'll just take a little look at how to affect these in editing. So it is really simple. In this case, we will just need to straighten a little bit. So we'll do that first. Just grab my crop tool and I will move it so that that edge is straight. So as I said, try to get this right in camera, but if you don't, it is fixable in post. Next, we will deepen the blacks because they are looking a little bit too bright down this area. So all we do is drag down that black slider until we get it to a place we like. So maybe there. And then I can recover the shadows a little on the egg because it got a bit dark there, just to brighten that up a touch by raising my shadows. That's pretty much it. I could also do some other things. I could do some color changes, I could do some sharpening, and that's totally up to you. But for now, we'll leave it there. The next thing I want to show you is how to remove any obvious stands that you may have used. So we will use this image here. I'm not sure it's the perfect one. The edges aren't quite meeting. It's not totally in focus, but it will do. So we'll just take this over to Photoshop with Photo, Edit in, and then Edit in Adobe Photoshop. Now there's many ways to attack this. What I will do is make a selection of the egg. So I will go to my Object Selection tool, which is found under your fourth icon down on the toolbar. And I will click that and then make sure the Object Selection tool is selected. I will drag my mouse or cursor over the egg and it will try and make a selection. So now I'll just click and say, yes, I want to keep that selection. However, it has actually included the thing we want to remove in that selection, which is a bit of a pain. So I will zoom in with my Z tool. I will load my Object Selection tool again, which is W. And now, God, this box is so annoying, isn't it? I will hold down Alt or Option. And this means it tells your selection that you do not want to include bits. So holding that down, I will now drag it around the section I do not want included, let go, and hopefully it does a good job. So what I'm going to do instead is use a different tool. So this time I'm going to go to the Lasso tool, which is your third down on the toolbar. And I'm going to, again, hold down Alt or Option, and I'm just going to freehand draw around the sections that I do not want. That's looking a bit better. Excellent. Or I should say, excellent. So now I'm just going to add a layer mask to this layer with this little button here, which is a rectangle with a hole in it. And that has dropped out our background. So what I will do is make a copy with Control or Command J. And I'm just going to delete the layer mask on the bottom one. So we've still got it there. So now I'm going to highlight the bottom layer. So the one underneath the one we just created with the layer mask. And I'm going to use, I think, my clone stamp. So it is found here. And I will try and remove this little section here. And we'll do that by sampling with Alt or Option. So you hold down Alt or Option and it turns to this cursor here. And I will click once And then I can paint over the problem areas. And because we have the egg on its own layer, we can even paint over the egg, but you won't see it because that layer is on top. It's fantastic. So we'll do this very carefully because the light is gradually tapering off. So I'll take now a little sample from here, paint it over this section. So can you see how this is working? Just sampling bits and drawing over. Now this is where it gets a little tricky because we don't really have a section to taper out from. So I might try and draw kind of upwards. Just clean up this little bottom edge here that's a bit too harsh. This bit here can be more pinky. Let's zoom out and have a look. Not too bad. It is a little too harsh for my taste though. So what I will do now is create a new layer above this one and below the other. And I'm going to sample this bit again. I'm going to paint that out just a little bit more, just to make it look a bit more realistic, such as that. Giving it a bit more of an accurate kind of curve. And then I'm going to drag down the opacity on that. So maybe to there. Let's take a look. Yes, I think that looks a little bit better. So I would spend a little bit more time just tidying that up, but you kind of get the idea. So that was before and this is after. I'll probably just taper that edge off just a tiny bit more. There, that looks good, I think. What do you guys think? Yeah, much better. Although now we've got a little problem with this edge. So what I can do if that happens is add a layer mask now to this layer. Use my brush tool with black to paint away. And I can just paint that little annoying edge away. Yeah, I think that looks great. So if you can see your stand, that's how you'd remove it. If you give this project a go, be sure to share your results in my Facebook group, which I have linked below. But for now, happy creating.